Coming up in the news, the island's chief meteorologist giving the latest updates on the tropics. The Deputy Prime Minister weighs in on the island's 2-week lockdown. And residents out and about in preparation mode. The Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition, starts now.
This is the Bahamas Tonight, Northern Edition.
This is the Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition. Good evening, all. I'm Megan Shepard. Thank you so much for tuning in. Topping news. As all eyes continue to watch the tropics, the potential storm continues to advance further into the Caribbean. Tonight, the local chief meteorologist says while this weather system may not have time to strengthen to hurricane status, now is not the time to let our guards down. Shashina Rowe-Farquharson reports.
Chief Meteorologist Siobhan Moxie Bonamy says there may be some good news on the strength and intensity on the potential tropical cyclone number 9.
Right now, the system is still somewhat organized, but the center itself, the actual center of circulation, remains somewhat ill-defined. And so that, as you can see, even though we have winds at tropical storm strength right now, it doesn't have a name because we don't have a very well-defined center that will deem it to be called Tropical Storm Isaias if it does in fact get the name.
So at this point, here's what you can anticipate.
Best case scenario in terms of the storm strength itself is still, as it's projected, a tropical storm. However, it is more than likely it will probably be down to maybe a depression or even just a open wave weather system once it would have come into contact with Puerto Rico and Hispaniola.
And with the current models, she says it is unlikely that the storm will have sufficient time to get to hurricane status.
The general consensus is that more west, slightly north of west track, taking it very much skirting the north coast of Haiti, Dominican Republic, passing more or less to the south of Inagua, and skirting or in between the north coast of Cuba and Ragged Island / South Andros, and then going toward the Florida Straits. So if that continues, that will definitely be a big sigh of relief for us in all of the islands. But again, that does not negate that we ought to be getting, when the storm does pass to our south and west, squally periods, gusty winds, and perhaps possible flooding in low-lying areas. So we ought not to let our guard down because, again, the eastern portion of the track still takes into account some of our western islands. So if it jogs any more to the right, that will bring more into play. And so while we are sort of relieved that it's starting to go on a more westerly track, we should be mindful that any jog can spell more weather for us. And so we never should let our guards down. We prepare as if it's coming, and we always give God thanks when it go past and we don't get much from it.
Shashina Rowe-Farquharson, ZNS Network News.
Meantime, the Minister for Disaster Preparedness Management and Reconstruction meeting with Emergency Operations Center officials today in preparation mode for the potential storm. In this report, he gives an account as to how the ministry is preparing. Jamila Mizik reports.
Minister of State for Disaster Preparedness Management and Reconstruction, the Honorable Iram Lewis says, although it seems the weather system will not be a major threat, they will treat it as such and are putting all of the necessary protocols in place to ensure that they are ready. He says they're working closely with the Met Department, the Department of Social Services, and the City of Freeport Council.
Hurricane shelters are being prepared. Further inspections are being carried out. In Grand Bahama, we just came out of an EOC meeting with all of our various emergency support groups. So everyone has been given their mandate with what to do with respect to being ready. We will make a call with respect to opening up our EOC, perhaps by Friday afternoon, certainly no later than Sunday. And like I said, even though we're not expecting any sort of a hurricane, we will still be in a position, just in the event that something shifts.
Minister Lewis says they are aware of all of the COVID-19 protocols and are preparing shelters with those protocols in mind.
All of our shelter workers are fully aware. Our team from the Ministry of Health They are fully aware of the protocol. Our transportation department is fully aware. And in fact, all of the various emergency support functions and our partners are fully aware of the COVID-19 protocols. And like I said, we are also in discussion with the city manager, Mr. Troy McIntosh. One of the concern is that there's still some debris to be collected. We don't want any unnecessary projectiles on the streets.
Now, as it relates to the island of Abaco, the minister says officials on that island and the Keys are also actively preparing.
Communities of Moores Island, Sandy Point, Cherokee Sound, Crossing Rocks, they were all involved in that meeting. I was in touch with Ms. Cheryl Boodle-Lang, who assured me that the persons on Green Turtle Key, on Warner Key, headed by the local government councillors, Mr. Jeremy Sweeting and his team, they're actively preparing those facilities on Green Turtle Key. Team is in Grand Key, preparing Grand Key shelters, which will be mainly at the school. In Moores Island, I was reassured that the school is well on the way. They have a final inspection today by the Ministry of Works and Social Services on Moores Island to ensure that the school is ready.
The minister noting that an emergency transport support system is on the ground to provide ground and water transportation to the residents of Sweetings Key in the event of evacuation. He adds that an updated shelter list will be provided on Thursday, July 30th. Jamila Mizik, ZNS Network News.
Well, as residents continue to prepare the inside of their homes with grocery items, others are also still in rebuilding mode. Following the announcement of the opening of hardware stores by the government of the Bahamas, many residents took to the various stores to purchase necessary building supplies. Our J. Philippe has more.
With the possible threat of a storm impacting the Bahamas, the office of the Prime Minister in Grand Bahama recently in a press conference permitted all hardware stores to reopen. The Bahamas Department of Meteorology issued a tropical storm watch for the islands of the southeast Bahamas. The disturbance is moving toward the west-northwest near 23 miles per hour, and this general motion, with some slight reduction in forward speed, is expected over the next few days. The announcement, which was made by the Minister of State for Grand Bahama, Senator Kwesi Thompson, on Tuesday afternoon, will allow Grand Bahamian residents the opportunity to purchase needed supplies in preparation for a possible storm. Our ZNS team made a number of stops at various hardware supplies on the island, including Kelly's, Third Dimension Construction, Gold Rock, and the Hardware Center. Over at Kelly's, construction can be seen in progress, but the store was not open for business. In a social media press release from Kelly's, management said Kelly's Freeport acknowledges the recent announcement by the government allowing hardware stores to open effective July 29, 2020. Due to operational reasons, Kelly's building materials will not be open. We will provide further updates for possible contractors as soon as possible. Over at Third Dimension Construction, residents can be seen on the outside waiting to be served. Stacy Hanna, delivery dispatch personnel, says they have been busy since the store opened at 7:30 a.m. However, she says that the store has all supplies in stock.
We do have the building supply stuff, the wood, the screws, the nails, the barrel bolts, and stuff like that most people would need to batten down their house for this tropical depression that's about to pass through. We have some other stuff in stock. We have nails and screws if they've already bought their stuff previous. Well, so much not to say we are expecting the storm, but just to be on the safe side, we're just grateful that we're open so that we can be able to supply the customers with the things that they do need.
She also reminded possible customers that COVID-19 protocols is still of high importance for their customers.
We do the sanitization. We check your temperature as you come in. You are required to stand in line. I know that's tedious for a lot of people, but it is mandatory. But other than that, the lines are moving smoothly. We're getting everybody processed in and out very quickly. And so far, no hassle and no complaints from any customers whatsoever.
Gold Rock also has been open from 7:30 a.m., where store supervisor Dwyler Martin says customers have been coming in frequently for storm supplies.
Once we were aware that the storm was threatening the Bahamas, we fully stocked up with vendors. Everything now is in transit. So with that being said, we will be fully stocked. So after you guys come in and deplete, we will be ready for you when you need us again after the storm.
At the hardware center, there were customers purchasing supplies for the possibility of weekend rain and strong winds. All hardware stores will remain open, even though Grand Bahama is currently on a 2-week lockdown. I'm Jay Philippe, ZNS Network News.
The 2-week lockdown came as disappointing news for some on Grand Bahama as the economy was beginning to pick up after being closed for some 3 months. In this report, the Deputy Prime Minister is expressing his agreement, but adding that the lockdown was absolutely necessary in order to save lives during this COVID-19 pandemic. Italia Hall has more.
K. Peter Turnquist says the 2-week lockdown is unfortunate news for Grand Bahama, but when the government made the decision to reopen the borders, they did not expect Bahamians to travel to Florida, which is a COVID-19 hotspot. The DPM and East Grand Bahama MP says he knows the lockdown is a disappointment for many Bahamians, but it is necessary.
We had certainly advised people that they ought to have traveled only for very essential needs and not for the usual shopping or holiday experience, given the fact that the virus is so very live in the United States. It appears from the data so far that most of the cases that came back into the country came from these overseas visits.
There is now community spread on Grand Bahama, and as a result, the DPM says a lockdown will help to bring the situation under control, especially since the Rand Memorial Hospital is challenged.
Cannot afford to have a spike in cases that becomes unmanageable for the facilities that we have. And so the advice of the healthcare team is that we lock it down now, get it under control, so that we don't have an overrun of the facilities in Grand Bahama as well as in New Providence.
As it relates to the rise in cases, the Deputy Prime Minister says there is no one to blame.
The government continues with its support programs to try and ease that burden somewhat. We know that we can't help everybody and we can't fix the situation for everyone, but we're doing our best to provide business support through tax credits and tax deferrals, as well as through credit facilities through the Small Business Development Center, assistance for individuals through NIB and social service.
And as for what Grand Bahamians can expect following the 2-week lockdown, the DPM says you can expect a slow pickup in tourist travel.
Because I'm sure that we will observe some different protocols with respect to the reopening of the borders. We can also anticipate that some of the projects that are on the table will be delayed as a result of this COVID-19 experience. So that means that the return to economic growth for Grand Bahama, as well as for the Bahamas in general, is going to be slow. That means that we have to ensure that, one, we value the jobs that we have. Two, that we ensure that we utilize all of our resources wisely.
Turnquist, who is currently in quarantine, is asking Grand Bahamians to adhere to the rules during the lockdown. He adds that things may be rough for the next few months, but the government is hopeful that at the end of the year, the state of the economy will improve. Italia Hall, ZNS Network News.
As the number of COVID-19 positive cases across the country continues to climb, 6 residents on the Berry Islands are among those infected. Tonight, our Jamila Mizik speaks to one resident who shares how those on that island are coping with this new reality.
Community activist on the Berry Islands, Kevin Wallace, says for 4 months, residents on the Berry Islands were living virtually COVID-19 free. However, unfortunately, last week, the island recorded its first number of COVID-19 positive cases. Wallace says persons who tested positive had traveled to Moores Island for a quick getaway after being locked down for months.
For sure, they knew the persons was going to be positive with the COVID virus, they would have not traveled there. I'm quite sure that would have not happened. But be it us, the trip happened and the persons came back, and now we have 6 cases in the Berry Islands.
Now, while residents on that island seem to be doing okay, he says they're hoping that no more cases arise because it has hindered life on the island.
It even hindered the economy a little bit more. Shops closed, hindered family life. Families passes on to families who didn't even travel, friends to friends, I assume. And so this is another experience in our life that we really wasn't welcoming COVID in the Berry Islands. We were hoping that we would go on COVID-free. But like I say, as it is, there it is. We have it. Now we got to deal with it. We have to eradicate it.
Wallace noting that he's been personally affected since being ordered to self-quarantine after coming in contact with a COVID-positive patient, including some of his church family who are also on 2 weeks quarantine. He's encouraging residents on that island to do their part so that things may soon return to some sort of normalcy.
The persons who are out there on the streets, try to practice as much social distance as possible, wear your mask. Let's see if we can get back to being who we are here in the Berry Islands. Even though we're nice sociable people, ain't nothing wrong with separating yourself right now at this time. The Bible says there's a time for everything. And so try to stay free. Let's see if we can get this COVID-19 out of our communities.
Jamila Mizik, ZNS Network News.
Peace is often considered the absence of war or conflict. But peace also points to something that is complete or whole. Life becomes complex with relationships and numerous situations. When anything that is normal goes missing or becomes unstable, your peace breaks down. Today, jobs are unstable, children are out of school, food is short, and death and disease is rampant. Life seems no longer whole, and so much needs to be restored. Sometimes we believe, if I can just get a job, maybe get some money, get over this hurricane season, or if this COVID disease will just go away, I will have peace. The way to have peace in our homes and in our communities is by working together for each other's benefit. It takes working together to restore broken relationships and rebuilding our lives and our economy. Peace is found in the presence of God. There you can override every state of brokenness, sickness, death, and destruction. Jesus says to all who follow him, "The peace I give is a gift the world cannot give. So don't be troubled or afraid." Jesus made peace between man and God when he died on the cross and rose from the dead. To have this peace, it means accepting Jesus Christ as your Savior and following his teachings. So true peace is not just the absence of conflict in our lives, in our relationships, or in our nation. Peace is taking what is broken and restoring it to wholeness. Jesus is our peace. Allow him to speak to the storms in your life, saying, "Peace, be still."
When we come back, the president of Abaco Chamber of Commerce shares why more skilled workers are needed on that island.